Good evening and welcome back to Conflict of Interest, and I'm pleased to introduce this evening's guest, Brian Boyd. G'day, Brian.
G'day, Peter. Nice to see you again.
Yeah, long time. And Brian is the Secretary of the Victorian Trades Hall, which is the peak trade union body in Victoria with some 650,000 members.
Yep. Men and women, I should remind you.
Members, I said.
Men and women.
Members.
Yeah.
Like Gough Whitlam's men.
Well,
and
he
women
said
in Australia.
650,000 men at the barricades. It's actually men and women.
Men and women at the barricades.
Yeah. I corrected myself and said women.
That was your Sam Newman moment.
That's right.
Well, that was. But let me ask you this: your trade union movement spent a lot of money on the last election to elect Rudd, particularly on work care.
Work choices.
Work choices.
Work choices.
Yeah.
A lot of money advertising.
Millions.
Millions. Not just confined to work choices, but are you happy with what the Rudd government's done so far?
No, we're not.
Okay. I know you're not happy about work choices, and we'll come back to that.
Yeah.
But what about the rest of it?
Look, I think he did a fantastic job on the apology to the Aborigines. I think he's looking at some of the other social and education and environmental issues in a good manner that Howard had never had the capacity to do so.
So you're happy with everything except work choices?
He is abysmal on work choices and in fact getting rid of the Howard IR legacy, because that's the key thing that's sticking in our claw.
What's the problem? You understand this far better than I do because it's not my area, but it seemed to me what happened was Howard passed legislation to change the way the workplace operated. So why can't the legislation just be repealed? What's the problem?
He didn't actually quite change the way workplaces operated. He changed the rights of workers and their ability to be represented.
By legislation?
Yes, he used work choices and other brands of
Well, he uses it as a tool to smash the unions. But why do you say
Why can't it just be repealed?
Why do you say Rudd has been so disastrous on this issue?
Well, because he's taking too long, and the promises he made before the last federal election, just a month or two out, after we went through all of the policy development at the May ALP National Conference, which we were willing to live with. He then reinvented it and revisited it in August and September and said he was going to keep the restrictions on right of entry. He was going to keep the ABCC in the building industry for another 3 years. All these things came after the ALP National Conference, which we were not privy to. They made it up on the run because Howard brought in that silly bloody fairness test to try and wind back the excesses of work choices. Hold on, Peter.
Why is he doing this, Brian? I don't understand. He's in power. He's in power for another 3, maybe 6, 7 years. He's got a big majority in Parliament.
But Rudd is essentially a Conservative in many respects.
But why?
Well, definitely on this issue is. On the Aboriginal question on the environment, he isn't.
No.
Let's be honest.
No.
But on the industrial relations questions, he's definitely going all the more pro-boss than pro-worker, in my view, and he needs to correct that.
But I'm asking you why. Why do you think he is pro-boss rather than pro-worker? Why?
Because they developed this idea before the federal election that they had to neutralise Howard's, what I call a step back. He brought in this fairness test, so they went to meet him again. After we developed the IR policy that we could live with in May, by August they had Howard had reneged on work choices staying the way it is because he knew there was a big reaction building up to it and he was facing defeat. So he brought in the fairness test. Rudd and Gillard met that test by going further towards Howard's original policies and left us hanging in a limb.
But Brian, it's generally accepted that one of the major factors in Howard losing the election and possibly his seat was work choice.
Correct.
I mean, that's what has got Rudd there, plus the union support.
Yes.
I don't understand why, as a matter of policy, he doesn't do it, and just simply as a matter of loyalty, why he doesn't get rid of it. Can you explain that to me?
Well, I suppose he can speak for himself. I mean, I suppose he's got this view about being running the country on across the board.
But he's being disloyal, isn't he?
I'm not going to go there. We wanted to get rid of Howard.
So you see him as having solidarity with the union movement, do you?
No, but there is a history. There's a history of the industrial wing and the political wing of the Labor movement. For the last 100 years, always having a conflict. No, it's not.
Different.
It's
Brian, this raises a broad...
It isn't different. We've always blued with the Labor Party when it's in power.
Yeah, but this is different.
The industrial wing.
But hang on. But Brian, one of the things we were talking about earlier was the fact that, for example, in New South Wales, Morris Yuma must be wishing the unions would just go away because he's got real problems on his electricity privatisation plan.
Correct.
What does it say at the end of the day, though? Where else are the unions going to go? I mean, we're talking about the future of the ALP. Without the unions, the ALP is a significantly weakened political body in Australia. Correct.
Well, I believe that. From my point of view and my history in the
But does everybody in the ALP share that view?
No, they don't.
Right.
No,
What do they think the unions could be dispensed with?
Yes, there are sections in the ALP political wing who want to go more the Blair methodology, you know, the so-called third way, more the Democratic Party in America. That, you know, they all have links with the union movement in those countries, but it's nowhere near the history that we've had in Australia.
So how powerful is that train of thought in federal cabinet at the moment?
We're going to find out very shortly, because when the new substantive IR bill is tabled by Julia Gillard, you know, that's supposed to replace work choices, because it's all still in place, work choices at the moment, except for about 5%.
I don't understand.
That got rid of the ability to create AWAs, but most of it, 90%, is in place, and also the ABCC's in place, and we're having union officials like Noel Washington facing jail.
But the ABCC is going to stay.
Well, no, they're promised.
For 3 years, we're told.
Yeah, well, we don't agree with that. So the cabinet.
Are you going to do anything about it?
Yeah, well,
what are you going to do about it?
Yes, I'm saying there's a campaign building and building as big as your rights at work before the last federal election over what's going to be in the substantive bill and what's happening with the ABC.
Well, hang on. No, what you're saying.
You brought Rudd
hang on, Peter.
down.
Hang on.
You brought Howard down. You're going to bring Rudd down.
No, there's no intention to bring anybody down. We wanted to bring Howard down. You're correct, 100%.
But don't you want to get rid of Rudd and get a prime minister?
No, we want to convince Rudd.
Is loyal.
I think
they'd
see this as more as a.
We want to convince Rudd.
Yeah,
we want to convince Rudd and Gillard to do the right thing.
Brian, I want to ask
at
you
the
this
moment
question.
They're not.
Brian,
you're correct.
Brian, I just want to ask you this question. Within the federal ALP now, you've got people like Bill Shorten, Greg Combay, a range of people. In fact,
Lindsay Tanner,
quite a lot of trade unionists.
Yes.
In fact, it hasn't been as strong for a number of
Mike
years.
Simon.
Darren
Cheese.
In other words, you should be the union perspective in the ALP has probably never been stronger in the federal ALP in recent years.
With senior
is that helping you or hindering you at the moment?
Well, can I say at the moment we're lobbying over these two big issues, the ABCC and the substantive IR bill that's coming up later this year. Very behind the scenes and up front, lobbying very hard about what should happen in those two areas. And those ex-union officials who are in Parliament, we're spending a lot of time with them, trying to convince them, to convince their other cabinet and caucus colleagues to do the right thing.
Are they on side?
Many of them, many of them have said yes, they're still on side and they want to do the right thing.
Well, I find this great disloyalty on the part of these people. I can't believe it.
Well, you wouldn't. We'll take it up after unfortunately, we've got to go, Peter. But, Brian, we could talk about this all night, but we really appreciate the fact that you've come on tonight. And when we come back, we might take up this issue of Kevin Rudd and the unions and the ALP. And we've got Peter fired up for the first time tonight.
Thanks, comrade.
Thank you very much,
we'll
comrade.
Meet again.
We will.